The AAC Report is brought to you by Blahut of Realty One Group. Whether you're looking to buy your very first home or looking to downsize or upgrade, call Blahut anytime at 407-748-0484. Welcome to the AAC Report only on the Knightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. We thank you for listening. Hope you're staying well and staying healthy. Coming up on this week's show, we'll talk to Dustin and Sam from the Scott and Holman podcast as we do our check-in on the University of Houston. But first, the National Football League draft took place last week. 17 players were drafted from AAC schools. Going down that list for you now, and all those picks started in the third round. Antonio Gibson, the wide receiver of Memphis, was drafted by the Washington Redskins with the 66th pick. Coming in at the 72nd pick, Josh Jones, offensive tackle from Houston, was picked up by Arizona. The number 78 overall pick in the third round, Matt Hennessy, the center from Temple, went to Atlanta. With the 93rd pick in the third round, Josiah DeGuerra of Cincinnati, the tight end, goes to Green Bay. And with the 99th pick in the third round, Matt Pert, offensive tackle from UConn, goes to the New York Giants. In the fourth round, with the 123rd overall pick, Reggie Robinson II, cornerback from Tulsa, went to the Dallas Cowboys. And with the 128th pick overall, wide receiver Gabe Davis of UCF was picked by the Buffalo Bills. In the fifth round, with the 155th pick overall, Travis Gibson, defensive end from Tulsa, drafted by Chicago. The 169th overall pick in the fifth round, Harrison Hand, cornerback from Temple, goes to Minnesota. And with the 173rd pick overall in the fifth round, Darnell Mooney, wide receiver from Tulane, was drafted by the Chicago Bears. In the sixth round, with the 196th overall pick, Sean Bradley, linebacker from Temple, is staying in Philadelphia with the Eagles. And James Prochet, with the 201st pick in the sixth round, wide receiver from SMU, was tabbed by the Baltimore Ravens. And the last five picks in the seventh round from the American, with the 223rd pick, Chris Clayburgh, quarterback of Memphis, went to Jacksonville. With the 281st pick in the seventh round, center Dustin Woodard of Memphis goes to New England. With the 237th overall pick, Vicarious Keys, cornerback from Tulane, drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs. With the 241st pick in the seventh round, Chappelle Russell, linebacker from Temple, was picked up by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And with the 246th pick in the seventh round, Malcolm Perry of Navy, and he was drafted as a wide receiver, was picked up by the Miami Dolphins. And of course, Perry had a tremendous season as quarterback for the Midshipmen in the past season. So after the draft was concluded, it was time to move on to the undrafted free agent signings. Let's run through that list for you now. The New York Jets aimed Bryce Huff, the defensive end out of Memphis. Cincinnati landed Kendall Futrell, linebacker from ECU. Pittsburgh Steelers signed Christian Montano, offensive lineman from Tulane. The Jacksonville Jaguars signed Nate Evans, linebacker from Central Florida. The Los Angeles Chargers grabbed two American players, Darius Bradwell, running back from Tulane, and Rodney Clemens, safety from SMU. The New York Giants signed Dana Levine, defensive end from Temple. The Philadelphia Eagles picked up a pair of running backs from the American, Adrian Killens from UCF and Michael Warren from Cincinnati. And the Washington Redskins signed Isaiah Wright, wide receiver from Temple. The Green Bay Packers landed Patrick Taylor, running back from Memphis. The Minnesota Vikings signed Neville Clark, cornerback from Central Florida. The Atlanta Falcons tabbed two American players, and Scotty Dill, offensive lineman from Memphis, and Jalen McCleskey, wide receiver from Tulane. The Carolina Panthers signed Sam Franklin Jr., the linebacker from Temple, and the Arizona Cardinals with two American signees, Ryan Becker, the tight end of SMU, and Rashad Medarius, wide receiver from Cincinnati. Coming up next, we will talk to Dustin and Sam from the Scott and Holman podcast about the Houston Cougars when the AAC Report continues in just a moment. Are you tired of the endless money pit of paying rent? Do you have a home you need to sell for top dollar? Talk to the Hometown Advantage award-winning real estate professional and fellow UCF Knight, Blake Blahut of Realty One Group. Blake has proven to produce results and a smooth process for his clients all across Central Florida. Whether you're looking to buy your very first home or looking to downsize or upgrade, talk to Blake Blahut. Visit him at his website, blakesorlandohomes.com, or contact him anytime at 407-748-0484. Again, blakesorlandohomes.com and 407-748-0484. Get the hometown advantage by working with Blake.
Raising the bar on what to expect from your personal injury attorney is our commitment to you at Chad Barr Law. I'm Chad Barr, and as a UCF alum, I am proud to present Knightline, the morning after show, Central Florida's only call-in show dedicated to our UCF Knights every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. And remember, if you or a loved one are injured in an auto accident, call us at 407-599-9036 to schedule your free consultation or visit us at chadbarlaw.com. Our clients come to us in need and leave as family. Offices Altamont Springs. Go Knights. Charge on.
Houston, Houston means that I'm one day closer to you.
It is our pleasure to welcome back to the AAC Report our friends from the Scott and Holman podcast. Dustin and Sam are here. Gentlemen, how are you guys doing?
Hey, hanging in there, Jeff. So good to be talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having us on, Jeff.
And what have you guys been doing to fill your time in this sportsless world?
I've been we've both been working on a couple of some long-term projects, some off-season content. Last off-season we did a college sports trivia tournament, which we're looking forward to doing again. So we've been working away on that, and other than that, just watching a lot of Mystery Science Theater 3000 and reminiscing on why it is that I might want to be binging a show about a guy who is stuck isolated against his will, trying to crack jokes to stay sane.
I personally decided to move across the country and start a new job. It didn't exactly decide to start it because of the pandemic. That the seeds of that were planted in December. So it's been kind of a strange part of my life. Moving 1,400 miles away. I'm living in the Las Vegas area currently, and one strange irony that I've told Dustin about is on my commute home every day, I drive by the last place where University of Houston sporting event happened, specifically UNLV's baseball field, where U of H beat UNLV in a midweeker. The Wednesday game got rained out, and then all college athletics got canceled. So that's kind of the little irony. I drive by this field at home, and on the way home, and I'm just reminded that, yeah, sports aren't happening anytime soon.
Las Vegas, of course, is one of the most alive cities in the world. That's got to be totally surreal seeing it non-active.
It is quite surreal. It is very weird. It is not the usual Las Vegas experience right now.
So, besides checking in to see how you guys are doing, thought we would reminisce about the recent football and basketball seasons. And, of course, with football, started with lots of promise. Dana Holgorsen coming in from West Virginia, Derek King coming back from injury. But a tough early season loss for the Cougs against Tulane. King red shirts, and the season pretty much gets upside down from there.
Yeah, I think even before Derek took the red shirt, you could kind of see the seeds of the undoing of the season. Just that even when Derek was playing, it just didn't seem like he really meshed with the offense that Dana Holgorsen wanted to run. Just didn't look like his junior year self, a really explosive playmaker. It just seemed like he had a hard time making passes that normally seemed comfortable for him the year before. So you definitely saw kind of the seeds of the undoing early on. A really tough non-conference schedule certainly didn't help, and then just a catastrophic run of injuries to the offensive line made the offense even harder to get going. So definitely a lot of Cougar fans, I think, expected Dana Holgorsen to come in, and just you hear that name, he has Derek King on the roster, and you expect lots of points to get put up. But obviously it went very much in the opposite direction in year one, and again, it definitely raised the kind of the stakes and the expectations for Coach Holgorsen moving forward.
I think everything Dustin said is correct there. The one what if that kind of drives me crazy is the Cougars had a pretty sizable lead on Tulane in week 4, and ultimately a game that I think was one of the most notable of the entire college football season, much to the chagrin of us Cougar fans, with Tulane having the crazy end and having the fake kneel play work against us, which just pains me to no end. And ending the game, I think a walk-off long touchdown pass in a game that looked like at least it was bound for overtime. And that's just one of those what-ifs I turn over my mind over and over again is if the Cougars pull that out, you're 2-2 after a tough non-conference, does De'Aaron King the next week go to Coach Holgorsen and ask him to redshirt? I think the whole season turns based on how that Tulane game goes. Obviously, what Dustin says, correct. The offense didn't look like it was meshing with De'Aaron King. I just got catastrophically unlucky with injuries on the offensive line. And I think one other notable thing was just it was bound to be a bad year for the Cougar defense. I think the defensive hires, at least on paper, still look solid. Joe Coffin from Arkansas State, Doug Belk, who came with Holgorsen from West Virginia as his DB's coach, and Brian Early, who did a great job under Coffin at Arkansas State developing defensive linemen. But it was a pretty senior-heavy defense in 2018. You also lost Ed Oliver off that defense. And despite having Ed Oliver and all those seniors, it was a pretty bad defense in 2018. So it was a young defense in 2019. It was a defense that didn't have a whole lot of historical positive production behind it. It was kind of a Murphy's Law of season, really. I obviously wasn't the great start the Cougar fans were hoping for with Coach Holgorsen, but I would almost caution anyone when you're looking at the long-term trajectory of Cougar football to read too much into 2019. It was just a season where every possible thing that could have gone wrong went wrong.
So we just had a little thing called the National Football League Draft, and Josh Jones of the Cougs, offensive tackle, was taken in the third round by the Arizona Cardinals. So what would you tell Cardinal fans about what kind of player they are getting?
I would say the one-word description of Josh Jones' Cougar career, workhorse. The guy started week 1 of his redshirt freshman season. That was that famous Oklahoma game at NRG Stadium that the Cougars won and was probably U of H football at its most hyped and buzziest. But from then until I want to say it was 9 games into the senior year, Dustin, I don't think he missed a single game in between then.
I don't believe so.
Which is incredibly durable for a guy taking the beating that is, a college offensive tackle. He has the frame to be a pro left tackle, 6'7", 320, so he's got the measurables. He's got the work ethic. He played in multiple different offenses. You talk about the many different schemes that he had to learn. I think 2016 his OC was Major Applewhite. 2017 his OC was Brian Johnson. 2018 his OC was Kendall Briles. 2019 it was Dana Holgorsen and his offensive brain trust. So Josh Jones has had to learn a lot of different offensive schemes, and I don't think looked worse for wear any of those years. So if you want durability, if you want someone who can learn on the fly, is used to a little bit of adversity, I think Josh Jones has it all. I'm very excited to see him land on what looks like a pretty up-and-coming team in the Cardinals.
Yeah, I think steady is the word that springs to mind when thinking about Josh Jones. And kind of like Sam said, it just over the last 4 years, it seems like everything has been the law has been turbulence around the Houston football program and the offense in particular. And throughout it all, Josh Jones has just been someone that you could consistently count on to be healthy and to be in the lineup and to be making the right play. And that's why I think you see that consistency is why, a lot has been made about, Pro Football Focus grading him out as the highest ranked Group of 5 offensive tackle in its history. And I think a lot of that is that he's not always gonna make the pancake or anything, but he's going to be steady. He's going to do the right thing. He's going to keep his guy in front of him, and just has like Sam alluded to with all the different changes, all the coordinators. He's been the one kind of steady presence over the last 4 years.
Do you guys have any prominent free agent signings coming out?
I think the only undrafted free agent signing that I've seen is Patrick Carr, who was a running back signed with the Seahawks. Other than that, I don't believe I've seen anything else. Sam can maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, because we're about to record an episode. We should probably know that by the time we start recording here in a little bit. It was a very small senior class, generally speaking, just due to a lot of it was already going to be a small senior class, just that's the way that the class worked. And then with a lot of the guys redshirting and or transferring out, that it decreased the size of the senior class even smaller. So the only other guy I'd really look out for other than Patrick Carr, who already signed, is Dane Roy, who was Houston's 20-something Australian punter that everybody seems to have, but one of the best punters in the country, Ray Guy finalist. So we're definitely hoping, he's a fan favorite. We're definitely hoping to see him sign with somebody at some point. But other than that, wouldn't expect too much out of the 2019 Cougar senior class.
And I'll say with Patrick Carr, one of the many, many things that went wrong with the 2019 season was not really having a healthy Patrick Carr at any point. He was someone I was pretty excited to see in Holgorsen's offense. Holgorsen likes to use tailbacks that are capable receivers, and that's Patrick Carr. I think for all the positives, at least in terms of points scored of Kendall Bryall's offense, I thought he was very inconsistent with how he used Patrick Carr, and I thought, okay, Holgorsen is going to find the best way to use this guy, and then he was basically hurt or playing hurt the entire season. I think if he's able to stay healthy, I think he could be a steal as a third down back for someone. Obviously, there's a lot I don't know about pro football and projecting pro football, but I have a lot of positive things to say about Patrick Carr.
So the first season with Dana Holgorsen is now under the belt. What do you think the 2020 season looks like if indeed we are going to have a season? I
think we definitely see improvement on the defensive side of the ball, first and foremost. The staff went pretty aggressively after Division I transfers, and I think with good reason. Of the many failings of the Applewhite staff, and even to a degree Herman and his 2 recruiting cycles here, is I don't want to sugarcoat it, they did an awful job evaluating on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, Ed Oliver's a big hit there, but outside of Ed Oliver, the number of guys that even developed into regular starters from the Herman and Applewhite recruiting class are few and far between, very much the exceptions to the rule. And some of the exciting names in there. One exciting name, unfortunately, that will not be with the team was Yabi Anoma, former top 5 national recruit, started his collegiate career at Alabama, played a decent amount as a true freshman, got kicked out of that program, joined the Cougar football program last fall. We were really excited about the prospect of having, an elite pass rusher, regardless of his baggage, join the program. And in January, he was dismissed from the U of H team for a violation of team rules, and that was that. But even without him, Marcus Jones, who was an all Sun Belt cornerback at Troy, goes into an extreme position of need at cornerback. I think U of H was basically playing with one Division I cornerback all of last season. Explains why Gabe Davis had the great game Gabe Davis had against the Cougars in Orlando. And a couple of safeties. Remember the guy from Oklahoma State's Tava Waniki, Hassan Hippolyte from Colorado, some JUCO guys that I'm pretty excited about, and just an extremely experienced defense. I think there was basically one regular starter from last year's team, Emil Fleming, our nose tackle, who was graduated. Everybody else saw a lot of action last year, got kind of thrown into the fire, and so you'll have a lot of Division I JUCO guys who look ready to start, a lot of experience from the returning guys, and hopefully get that together. I think you saw signs. You could tell Joe Coughlin definitely didn't have the horses he needed to run his scheme, but even against a brutal schedule, even with just nothing going this team's way, U of H still statistically improved as a run defense last year, which, again, given that you had UCF, Navy, Memphis, Oklahoma, just a lot of really, really good offense in the schedule, a lot of offenses where it's hard to show any kind of proof of concept against, they still occasionally showed proof of concept. And I'm optimistic that I don't think this is going to be a great defense in 2020 or whenever we have football again, but I think you're going to see even more progress from 2019 to 2020. It's going to look more like the kind of attacking scheme that Joe Coughlin wants to run, and just we're going to actually run 11 guys out there who were Division I caliber starters, which, all respect to the kids who played last year, just was not the case this defense. I think I'll let Dustin answer about offense because there's a lot of exciting stuff there, but I think the Cougar defense is going to take a big step forward whenever we play football. Is it a big enough step forward that this team's going to win 10 or 11 games and compete for a conference title? I'm not so sure, but it's going to look a lot more like a functional defense than anything we've seen since Todd Orlando left with Tom Herman.
Yeah, I think Houston will be improved as a football team in 2020. I think my biggest question is, to what extent does that improvement actually translate to wins? Because the schedule is once again going to be really tough. Just to give you some idea, Houston's non-conference road games this coming year, Washington State and BYU, both tough locations to travel to. And then Houston's 4 conference road games, Memphis, Navy, Cincinnati, SMU, all teams that won 10 games last year. Not often do I think many teams have to face every conference road game against a team that won 10 games the year prior. So I think Houston could be a better team and still go 7-5, 6-6, something like that, just because I think the schedule is going to be that tough. But I think we'll at least see Houston be more competitive. So much of the season, they just kind of looked like a team that was dealing with injuries, that was dealing with a lot of seniors that had redshirted. I think we'll see Houston look more competitive, start to win some of those games. And as Sam said, kind of set me up here. I think there's a lot to like about the offense. Clayton Tune is a true sophomore, dealing with a crumbling offensive line like we talked about. had some highs and lows, and frankly, it would have been a minor miracle if he hadn't had some lows, given everything that was going on around him and given how young he was. But he certainly showed the arm talent. Certainly looked more comfortable in Dana Holgerson's offense than D'Eriq King did early in the year. So with another year of him to come back, hopefully, like we talked about, a little bit less catastrophically bad luck on the line. And then I think the biggest addition of the offseason was really getting Marquess Stephenson, a wide receiver, to come back for his senior year. He pretty quickly announced that he was coming back. So for all the news of players leaving, getting him back, I think was a huge piece, because he is an absolute game breaker offensively who can just turn games around with his abilities, both as a wide receiver and a returner of kicks. So he was a big guy to get back, and like Sam said, pretty much for everyone coming back defensively and a lot of transfers getting eligible. So I think Houston's going to be more competitive. I just don't know if that's going to be, if they're going to be win the West Division competitive, or maybe just beating some good teams, playing a lot of competitive losses, and ending up 7-5 or something.
Well, as tough as it was for the football team, the basketball team, again, continued success. 3-way tie with Cincinnati and the surprise team in the conference, Tulsa, atop the AAC regular season standings. And, of course, the AAC night in, night out was like a fight in a phone booth. 13-5 record, certainly impressive to get marked down. Yeah, it was definitely a rock fight kind of a league this year, where even some of the bad teams that usually you can kind of pencil in for some wins, we're getting more competitive, giving people some games. And yeah, like you said, the top of the division with Cincy, always tough. And then Tulsa, kind of coming off of a very rocky, uneven non-conference slate, and then really, kind of finding another gear once AAC season started. And then even like a weird team like Wichita, which, heading into conference play, looks like the team to beat for the entire conference, as strong as they looked. And then suddenly, the wheels kind of fell off for them as they just kind of had some tough games in conference play. And really, it's remarkable that, I think a lot of Houston fans realized how high their expectations got for the basketball program so quickly, because, there were so many times during the year when you saw that, the talent was there, and you just saw it was a very young team. And I think we just kept forgetting this was a team that had graduated 4 starters from the year prior, that there's only 1 senior on the roster all year. And it was, a guy, Chris Harris is a front court player, very important rebounder and defender, but, not a scorer. So it was really a fascinating season to see just how high, the standards have gotten around this program, that even in what felt like a rebuilding year with a young team, even what felt like a rebuilding year where you saw so often the talent wasn't just polished enough to get the results that you wanted. At the end of the year, you still look up, you're 13-5, you tied for first place in the American Athletic Conference. And, frankly, it was as good as this team was defensively. I thought they had a really good chance of scaring some teams. I don't think anyone was going to want to face Houston come the NCAA tournament had that event actually occurred. So really encouraging, obviously frustrating not to get to watch March Madness play out. But with, as we said, losing only 1 senior, and we've got a couple guys that are kind of testing the NBA draft water, so we'll see how that all plays out. But really exciting season, and another big step forward for this program, and kind of makes you realize that Houston is going to be a program that's going to not fade away after that 1 year that we had the year before, the Sweet 16 run. This is a program that's going to restock under Kelvin Sampson and continue to be a force, not just in the conference, but really nationally.
I think the only thing I have to add is that what's so incredible to me is the way that Kelvin Sampson got this team to defend, because like Dustin said, it was a very young team. He graduated 4 starters from the 2018-2019 team. I believe by the time the year ended Ken Pom, this was the 292nd out of 353 teams in terms of cumulative experience of the rotation guys. And yet by the end of the season, this was like a top 20 defensive team. And Dustin and I could tell you, it was November, we played BYU and Rice in particular, and both those teams torched us offensively. That did not look like a team that was going to defend at Kelvin Sampson's level. I think we had faith that he would eventually get it figured out, and we understood there was a very young team with a lot of new pieces, but I don't know if you had asked me to predict in November how good this team would be defensively by the end of the season. I don't think I would have given you top 20 or top 25 in the country, and I think the biggest reason how the Cougars even got to 13-5 in conference play was playing incredible team defense, getting new pieces like Caleb Mills, Marcus Sasser, Quentin Grimes, the blue chip transfer from Kansas, to really buy in whole hog to what Kelvin Sampson wants to do defensively. I think the way that team defended, the fact that this team got their 2nd straight conference title with one of the youngest teams in the country, I think you can make a good argument that this past year, I guess should say, is Kelvin Sampson's best coaching job since he's been at Houston, which isn't to diminish the 2 previous years that were the 2 best teams we've had since Phi Slamma Jamma, but just getting that young team to buy in. Yeah, it made it absolutely clear. I don't think very many people doubted, but it made it absolutely clear that this is going to be a program for the long haul. This isn't going to be a good 2 or 3 year run and then inconsistent afterwards. This is going to be a power the same way Kelvin Sampson had Oklahoma as a power. This is going to be a consistently excellent team that is always going to be a threat to go into the second or third weekend of March Madness.
Well, one thing I found watching the Cougars play through the season was how relentless they are on the boards, especially on the offensive end. Their desire in 1-2 is certainly second to none.
Yeah, and it's not the tallest team. Obviously, Chris Harris was gifted in terms of height, but Nate Hinton was the best rebounding guard in the country last year, and he's 6'5". It's something that's emphasized for guy 1 through 5. I was reading a story, I think it was in The Athletic, just profiling Kelvin Sampson in Houston and all that stuff, and he talked about how he made Quentin Grimes run at the end of practice because he had gotten 0 rebounds. I want to say it was in the game against SMU. They take it very seriously. Rebounds are tracked in practice. Tips are tracked. They're just absolutely fanatical. I think it was at they put the bubble over the rim, Dustin.
Yep.
So that basically every shot gets missed, and just absolutely fanatical about the details of rebounding. If you're not someone who's willing to just rebound with reckless abandon, you're not going to last. You're not going to get on the court in this Cougar program. And it was incredible to see a team as young as last year's team rebound as well as some pretty veteran groups prior to them. It was a statement of the culture that Houston basketball has become under Sampson and his staff.
Yeah, we're both big fans of the advanced statistics, and one that we pointed out towards the end of the season. And one of those cases where the statistics really back up what you were seeing with your eyeballs, and that was Houston. I'm looking at their year-end KenPom numbers. They were 291st in the country in 2-point field goal shooting percentage offensively. They were 152nd in the country in 3-point shooting offensively. We weren't very good at putting the ball in the basket, and yet if you look at their overall offensive efficiency, they were 22nd. That was because they kept getting so many second and third and fourth chances at the ball that eventually they put one in, and that was kind of the course of the season. It was just this team, man. It was weird how many basketball games you can win while not being very good at shooting the basketball. And it was kind of a weird thing to think about. But I think, and this is kind of what we talked about, that's just the definition of culture and the definition of what Kelvin Sampson wants to see. Not that he doesn't want his teams to shoot well necessarily, but he has his team so good at playing defense, so good at rebounding the ball, so good at taking care of the basketball, so good at making the right decisions, that Houston won a lot of games even when it just felt like no one could hit the broadside of the barn from the field.
So the brakes on the train were pulled just before the conference tournament, and based on the regular season, I think this tournament would have been very much up for grabs. Houston certainly would have been the only solid team, at least going into the tournament, that would have had a bid to the big dance. And I think they were primed to do well there based on, again, what you guys talked about, their defense and rebounding.
Yeah, for sure. That's kind of what we said, that it was, as much as this kind of felt like an in-between year where last year you had a bunch of seniors in a Sweet 16 run, and certainly this coming year, Houston looks like a top 10 to 15 team nationally. I still really feel like this past year's team had the chance to make the run because they played that ugly style of basketball. They played a lot of games where it was, all about rebounds and 1-2. And when you play these big tournament games in these big, massive arenas, and a lot of times the shooting touch goes out the window for some guys, a lot of those games end up being played in that style. And that would have been exactly what Houston wanted to do, because that's exactly what Houston had been doing all year long. So I think this team, and we were kind of, I think their seeding would have ended up being a big deal, because I think depending on how well Houston did at a conference tournament, that could have been anything from a 7 up to maybe a 5 or something like that. And obviously, as a 5 or a 6, it's a lot easier to get out of that first round than it is as a 7 or 8 if you don't have to face a 1 or 2 seed in the second round there. So I think seeding and matchups obviously always play a huge deal heading into the NCAA tournament. But yeah, just like you said, I feel like the way that Houston plays very much sets itself up for success in a tournament setting.
And I don't base this on any specific thing other than my instinct, but U of H was just so unlucky last season in one possession games. I think in conference play, I was at Tulsa, at Cincinnati, at SMU, at Memphis, were all games decided by 2 points or less. And just as a stat head, to me, I just felt like at some point this team's close game luck was going to turn. This was still an excellent team, even with all of those just absurdly unlucky one possession late losses, I figured that was going to turn soon, either in the conference tournament or in the big dance. I based that on nothing other than just, my own belief as a sports fan, but I thought it was worth noting that this team still won a share of the conference title and went 23-8 while losing a statistically unlikely number of one possession games, in my opinion.
One of our favorite fun little stats we came up with during the season was that by the end of the year, every single team in the American had at least one conference loss by more total points than all 5 of Houston losses combined. All of Houston's losses in conference were that close.
And what do you think the pieces will look like for the 2020-2021 season?
I think the big question is, what do Dejan Jarreau and Nate Hinton do? Because they both have put their names in the NBA draft process. I don't think either guy, as much as I think highly of Dejan and Nate, are going to be first or even probably second round draft picks, but I think both guys are talented enough to play professionally and draw a decent paycheck somewhere. So I think the big question is, what do those guys do? If they come back, Houston basically has every key contributor back except for who Dustin mentioned, Chris Harris, who was an excellent, I would say, go as far to say, elite offensive rebounder and shot blocker last year, but not really a big offensive contributor. That just wasn't Chris's game. And that you'd add Nate Hinton, a kind of do a little bit of everything kind of guy, the best rebounding guard in the country, and Dejan Jarreau, who had a very uneven junior season, but was the AAC Sixth Man of the Year as a sophomore. And I personally have faith that if he has a fully healthy season, Dejan could have something that looks a lot like he had as a sophomore, that he'd be that guy who's just impossible to defend at the rim, finding guys in the right spots. And I think the 3 guys I'm really excited to see about the development of, guys who are for sure going to be back next year, are Marcus Aster and Caleb Mills, who are both freshmen last year, and Quentin Grimes. Mentioned him earlier, was a 5-star, was the top recruit in the state of Texas in the class of 2018, had a pretty uneven season at Kansas, left to kind of explore his options professionally. Kansas basically didn't have a scholarship for him, ended up going to Houston, had a kind of uneven sophomore year. He had a stretch at the beginning of conference play right around when we played UCF, actually, where he was playing pretty badly. I don't think you could sugarcoat that. But he also had some efforts where if we didn't have Quentin Grimes give the effort he gave, I think my favorite example of that is we played Rice, the crosstown rival, former fellow Conference USA member of both of our respective schools. We were playing Rice at Rice, and there was looking like a lot of points where Houston was about to take an L to what would have been a quadrant 3 or quadrant 4 loss. The kind of loss that I think could have seriously put Houston's at-large tournament resume in doubt, but for Quentin Grimes going just unconscious from the field in the second half and allowing U of H to pull away and win that. Had a great effort at South Florida and just a very ugly bare-knuckle fight kind of game. And in the regular season finale, in Houston's last game of the year, Q pretty much single-handedly willed us to a win as we just could not make a shot to save our lives against Memphis. And I think if he can develop something like that consistently, I'm not going to say he's going to live up to every single bit of the promise he has, 5-star McDonald's All-American, top 10 national recruit, but I think Quentin Grimes can be a first-team All-Conference kind of player if he puts it all together.
Yeah, I think for Houston, in terms of what the team's going to look like for next year, I think the guards are going to be just ridiculously deep. Even if Nate and Dejan were to both go pro, which I don't think will happen, I think there's a pretty good chance at least Nate will come back. You got Quentin Grimes coming back, like Sam said. You got Marcus Sasser and Caleb Mills, who both showed some really exciting promise as freshmen. And then you've got your number 1 recruiting class in school history in terms of, since the recruiting rankings came out. And that's led by 2 guards in Tremont Mark and Jamal Shed, who are both expected to be instant contributors. You have a transfer who was sitting out this year in Cam Tyson, who was a guard who scored 13 points a game as a freshman for Idaho and is a guy with 3-point range as soon as he steps in the building. So in terms of the guards, I'm not sure, unless Houston runs a 4-guard lineup all year, how they're going to find minutes for all these guys. But then I think the front court is it's a little bit fair to have some more questions there. Chris Harris, as Sam mentioned, was top 10 in the country in offensive rebound percentage and block percentage, so a guy that could absolutely change games without scoring. Bryson Gresham is another forward who to similar abilities to Chris Harris, but then you're going to have some other guys contribute. That could be a freshman like Jaywan Roberts, who just incredible athlete, or Kyron Powell is the other freshman coming in, who's a forward, who's also very athletic. But I think that's going to be the question for Houston that determines whether or not that they're going to be a very good team or a team that, could potentially be a top 5, top 10 national team is once they find out what they're going to get from the forwards, because man, that guard room, like I said, just looks ridiculously stacked, regardless of how the NBA draft prospects guys, what decisions they end up making.
So not only disappointing for basketball coming to a halt before the conference tournament, Houston certainly strong in golf, in softball. So lots of disappointment out there for the spring sports too.
Yeah, no doubt. Houston, swimming and diving was a program that season got canceled right before NCAA championships. Houston had qualified 7 swimmers to go to swimming and diving championships, which was the most of any non-big money conference school. And had some seniors who were looking forward to that. The softball team was just tearing the cover off the ball, had gotten off to a really, really hot start. And with, the directional Florida is always strong in softball, Tulsa always strong in softball, the AAC a really strong softball season. So definitely a lot of disappointment. I will say Cougar baseball was the one season that maybe was not as disappointing to lose, just because it looked like the Cougars are going to be struggling on the diamond for the second consecutive year. But definitely tough loss across the athletics department, as you just see. It's everything from softball, where you lose almost your entire season, and golf, as you said, to swimming and diving, where you work so hard all year long, and then you finally get the stage of NCAA championships and gets taken away for something that you just have no control over.
I think the only thing I would add that Dustin didn't touch on there was track and field. It was kind of looking like maybe a bit between year, because the Cougars had 2 just unbelievable senior classes and top 3 finishes at the outdoor championships. I don't know if that was going to be in the cards this year, but there were a lot of really promising underclassmen athletes I think were looking like, coming together to be a future really awesome senior class. And we both actually went out in person to the outdoor championships in Austin last year, and it was one of the coolest sporting experiences I've ever been to. I expected it to be a pretty good time, and I think it blew the doors off my expectations. It was a really, really fun event, and just really sad we didn't get the indoor or outdoor track and field championships, just because how awesome Houston has been in that sport traditionally, and of course the last several years as well.
All right, well, guys, I do appreciate you being on once again to talk about Houston Cougar sports. And if you would please give us all the information following the Scott and Holman podcast and what you guys are doing.
Yeah, if you search Scott and Holman podcast wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. We are, like I said, weekly podcast. So far, we took 1 week off right when everything else happened. So far, we've been pretty good at putting out some content every week, though, as this goes on. So make sure to listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. And we are big Twitter users, Twitter junkies. So if you enjoy talking some AAC sports on Twitter, we're all about that. So we follow lots of accounts from across the AAC and across the country. So at SHPAWDCAST podcast with the pun in there. Follow us on Twitter, and we'd love to be chatting some AAC sports with you.
All right, guys. Well, thanks once again for being here. And as always, please stay healthy and stay well.
Hey, same to you, Jeff. Always good to talk to you.
Thanks for having us, Jeff.
We'll be back with a final note and wrap up this week's AAC report in just a moment.
Night Nation, this is Adam, one half of the dynamic duo that is the Sons of UCF, which is found only on the Knightline Sports Network. Join UCF Mike and I each week as we bring you some of the latest from in and around UCF sports, including such great segments as the Josh Heupel Translator, Top 8 Lists, and Cow of the Week. We'll also bring you some of the most in-depth and unique interviews with some of your favorite former Knights. You don't want to miss a moment, so make sure you subscribe to the Knightline Sports Network wherever you get your podcasts, and we'll take care of the rest. Go Knights. Charge on.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Fagley reminding you to tune in every Sunday morning at our new time, 10 to 11 a.m. on ESPN 580 Orlando for Knightline the Morning After, brought to you by Chad Barlaw. We'll be taking your calls and your texts reacting to the previous week's UCF sports action, and you never know who will show up. Once again, that's Knightline the morning after, every Sunday morning, 10 to 11 a.m. on ESPN 580 Orlando or TuneIn Radio. Go Knights and charge on.
A final news item before we conclude this week's AAC report, and not good news. Tulane guard Tashawn Hightower has been charged with murder, aggravated assault, battery, and possession of a firearm during commission of a felony in connection with a homicide that occurred on April 8th in Stockbridge, Georgia. No bond is listed for Hightower, who is currently an inmate at Henry County Jail, according to jail records. And according to the Henry County Police report, officers responded to a call about a person that had been shot around 11 a.m. that morning. The victim, Devontae Anthony Long, died of his injuries at the hospital. 5 of the 6 people determined by the investigators to be involved in the shooting have been arrested, including Hightower. He was taken into custody at 9:50 p.m. on Saturday night, April 25th. He had averaged 15.9 points for the Green Wave this past offseason after transferring into the program from Georgia. The 6'5 junior had declared for the 2020 NBA draft this month. He has since been dismissed from the program. As always, we invite you to follow me on Twitter at JeffAllen_88. And please do like and share all of our Knightline Sports Network programming with friends, family, even those who are your enemies. But you know what? In these times, we don't need enemies, right? Let's all be friends. And as always, we encourage you not to hoard toilet paper or, make sure you wash your hands, do all that good stuff, do what you need to do, be diligent. We will get through these times and eventually get back to normalcy down the road. This has been the AAC Report, only on the Knightline Sports Network. I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks for listening. Stay healthy, stay safe.